Sure, we talk about our Friday the 13th and our Halloweens and our Nightmare on Elm Street, but what about those Halloween-themed movies that we don't talk about as much, but probably should? Hey movie fans, so to continue our month of October talking about the best of Halloween-themed movies, I want to go with the top 5 most underrated ones. Yeah, I love the Halloween movies with Michael Myers, or like The Shining, or all these other really famous horror movies, but what about the ones that don't get the love that they should? Now, these aren't necessarily going to be horror-themed movies, but more just the ones that embody the spirit of Halloween, whether the things within them are actual Halloween day or themed events, or something associated with Halloween, like different creatures or characters that still kind of have that Halloween feel to them, if you know what I mean. So don't think this is all on 5 underrated horror, more so 5 underrated Halloween themed movies. At number 5, we have Trick or Treat. Now, I hesitated to put this in an underrated list because over at Universal right now, they have a scare zone just with Trick or Treat. So clearly there's enough of a fan base that they decided to put a Trick or Treat scare zone. That being said, when I've asked people, do you know what this is associated with, they think it's just a generic Halloween thing. They don't think it's actually associated with a movie, which shame on you for not knowing what Trick or Treat is, because it's kind of amazing. So what Trick or Treat is think of the adult version of Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark type thing of these Halloween themed short stories, and they kind of interweave with each other. I think there's 5 different stories that play back to back to back to back to back, and they all are independent, but they all interweave. So they're all kind of more or less, think of it like neighbors on a street. So they all will interact with each other at some point or another within their own stories, but they all have their own individual stories, if that makes sense. So it's all different people doing different things on the night of Halloween, with Sam, this little guy, little creature, we don't really know what Sam is. Sam is more or less the guardian of the day of Halloween, the festivities of Halloween. Obey the rules of Halloween and you will be fine. Don't, and Sam will come for you. Which, if that doesn't sound scary, oh, believe me, Sam is terrifying when he wants to be. Just obey the rules of Halloween, you'll be fine. So, like, always check your candy before you eat it. Don't destroy pumpkins before November 1st. Rules like that. But what this movie does is present just very unique and fun atmosphere. It very much feels like a Halloween movie to its core of just traditional Halloween feel, the trick-or-treating and the costumes, but also a little bit of the weird. Like, if one story doesn't really connect with you, at least one of them will, because there's a whole bunch of different ones with a whole bunch of different feels to them. Like, one is more suspenseful and scary, one is more lighthearted and fun. They're kind of all over the place, but they weave together incredibly well. It's a lot of fun and grossly underrated. If you have not seen Trick or Treat, if you can get your hands on it, it's kind of hard to find. If you can get your hands on it, absolutely watch it. It's a lot of fun. Sam needs to be a modern day Halloween icon, I think. Sam's a lot of fun. At number 4, we have a purely nostalgic pick on my part, but deal with it, it's my list. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, because this terrified me as a kid, and it's still pretty scary to this day. So Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island more or less asked the question of, what if the creatures in a Scooby-Doo movie were real? Like, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island has zombies, but they're real zombies. I was traumatized as a kid seeing Fred literally rip somebody's head off. Yep, it's as terrifying as that sounds. But what also makes this movie special is this Scooby-Doo movie is almost self-aware in the typical Scooby-Doo tropes. Like, at times, the Mystery Machine even says, this is where this will happen, this is where this will happen, this is where this will happen. And when it doesn't, it kind of turns things on its head and you're like, wait, isn't this the typical Scooby-Doo formula that I'm used to? And when you realize it's not, it kind of sets you back a little bit and you're like, whoa, I don't know if I like this. But then it makes for a more engaging and compelling story. And yes, it has a certain place in a lot of Scooby-Doo fans' hearts and of my age demographic, but the wider audience doesn't know this movie, and they really should, because it's frankly one of the better, if not the best Scooby-Doo movie. I believe it was number 1 of my top 5 Scooby-Doo movies. This was that phase of Scooby-Doo where they got really dark. This, Witch's Ghost, where they actually started dealing with real magic and real dark things, which is kind of weird because the message of Scooby-Doo is always, there's somebody behind a mask, that's what you should be afraid of, is people, not mythical fake things. Well, these aren't mythical fake things, they're very real things, but it was still lighthearted and fun, like a typical Scooby-Doo movie, but dark, and it had that fun, kind of somewhat scary vibe that you all kind of want in a Halloween movie. At number 3, we have 1408, a vastly underrated Stephen King adaptation. So what 1408 is, you have John Cusack, who is this paranormal investigator who more or less goes to these supposed haunted hotels, I'm using a lot of air quotes, who goes to all these haunted locations and more or less kind of debunks how scary they are, or he writes books about them and he's just an author. He tries to get money out of that, basically going to these haunted locations, seeing how haunted they are, and writing books about his experiences. That's it. So he gets a special invitation to visit this room called 1408. So when he arrives there, Samuel L. Jackson is there and is basically like, don't go to 1408. Bad things happen in room 1408. And you're like, I've heard this countless times. But then after some pressuring, Samuel L. Jackson just lets him go. And John Cusack is like, how scary can it be? And it starts off okay, but like any good suspense story, you gotta start off slow. And then the weird stuff starts happening, and then more and more weird stuff. And it's very different and unique. And to give you any form of details of what happens in the room of 1408 would be doing the movie a disservice. At times, John Cusack doesn't really have all of his mental faculties in order. The room is just messing with him. I guess you could say he wishes he was better off dead. But this movie is more of a psychological thriller, not so much a scary film, but one that really, if you want to be mildly scared, yet have a lot of suspense and just have fun with it, and just watch an engaging, good movie, 1408 is absolutely amazing. It's a great film. Just when you think you've got a handle of what 1408 is as like a room and as a thing, because I can't really describe it, things just start to shift. It's always changing. Just when you think you get a hold of it, just when you think John Cusack has a hold of it, things change. That's the brilliance of 1408, is it's not like any other psychological horror that you've seen before. It's something different and unique, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. At number 2, we have one of my favorite and most underrated comedies. Yes, comedy, What We Do in the Shadows. So I always describe this movie to people as the Office style of humor, of like talk to the camera, mockumentary style, except with 21st century vampires living in a flat together in Australia. It is as funny as that premise sounds. So it's by the same guys that did Flight of the Conchords, and one of the guys in this movie is directing Thor Ragnarok. So there you go. He's also in Green Lantern. Odd fact. Don't worry, he's a lot funnier in this than he was in that movie, and Thor will be a lot better than Green Lantern. But What We Do in the Shadows is just so funny, and it really has this Halloween spirit because they have this undead ball where there's zombies and werewolves and vampires and no humans allowed. It's all of these mythical creatures. But aside from that, because that's the final third of the movie, it's just vampire life and having turf wars with werewolves. It's the other side of Halloween. It's kind of like seeing Halloween Town from the Halloween Town residents' perspective of this is vampire life. This is our lives now. It's just kind of different and quirky and unique. And then when they introduce a new vampire to their group, having him adjust to life, it's really funny and different, and It's just quirky and unique. And the number one most underrated Halloween movie that I've ever seen, it's gonna sound weird, but Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Now hold on, I love the Halloween movies. It was the franchise that really got me into horror. The first John Carpenter 1978 Halloween, that's still my all-time favorite horror movie of all time. And the first time I watched this movie, I hated it because it's the one that there's no Michael Myers in. Hence why Halloween 4 is called Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. So what happened with Halloween 3 is they wanted to make the Halloween franchise applicable to other holidays. It sounds weird. So this movie has no Michael Myers killing people. It's all about the holiday itself of Halloween. So Silver Shamrock, 8 more days till Halloween, Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Oh, that theme song. That theme song is just annoying. So Silver Shamrock is distributing these masks to kids. And there's a guy kind of investigating the goings-on because he suspects something's going wrong with these masks and the organization behind it. It's more complicated than that, but at its core, this is the most Halloween of the Halloween movies. So what I mean by that is this feels like Halloween the holiday, not Halloween the slasher franchise. So at its core, in terms of the Halloween slasher franchise, it's not very good. But as a movie, it's actually pretty good and very creepy and unsettling. It feels much more like an actual Halloween movie. The second time I watched this, watching it with more open-mindedness, I guess. It feels more like a Twilight Zone episode, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's creepy, it's unsettling, it's different, it's actually completely separate from the Halloween franchise. In fact, one scene they're actually watching the original Halloween on the TV, so that establishes this as something different. But this really is, it gets a lot of bad rap because it's not a Michael Myers Halloween movie. But it's still a very good movie, especially for Halloween time, because it feels very much like the plot centers around Halloween the day. And if that's not a Halloween movie, I don't know what is. Well, what do you guys think about the top 5 most underrated Halloween movies? What are some of your guys' underrated Halloween picks? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you'd like to see and want to see more, subscribe to the channel, or find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Uncharted Media. Stay sharp, movie guys and gals.